All right, everybody. It's the Always Be Cool podcast, hanging out with your hosts, Bobby Kerr and Darren Copeland.
What's up, everybody?
We're hanging out at the Summit Lending Studios. We have got a phenomenally special guest today. Personally, my all-time favorite Kansas City Royal player. I'm going to let DC give his introduction. We've got Mr. Alex Gordon on the show.
Right, all right, everyone. Here we go. Born on February 10th, 1984, he attended Lincoln Southeast High School. Named Gatorade Nebraska Player of the Year in 2002. In 2004 and 2005, he was Big 12 Conference Player of the Year. At Nebraska, he won the Dick Hauser Trophy and the Golden Spikes Award. Drafted second overall by the Kansas City Royals in the 2005 draft. Get this, Bobby. 3-time All-Star. World Series champion in 2015. 8-time Gold Glove winner. Amazing.
That's what the bobble says.
That's what the bobblehead's right there. Also, don't forget hero of Game 1 of the 2015 World Series with that ninth-inning bomb home run over center field. All-around awesome guy, Alex Gordon, man. Welcome to the show. How are you?
All right.
Good, guys. I'm glad you read what I sent you the other day to read off my accolades. You missed a couple there, but I'll let it slide. No, it's,
go ahead and jump in.
Well, you know what? So when we were doing the research, Alex, I could have had a 30-minute intro about your high school and college career at Nebraska.
Yeah, you missed the football highlights. That's what I really actually care about. So
yeah,
no.
That was actually one of the questions on here. So here's a question for you. How close were you playing football instead of baseball?
Not close, but I was close into deciding if I wanted to play both in college. I didn't grow up playing football at all. I played flag football like most people do. I was a huge soccer player growing up. So I always loved soccer, just pretty easy game to learn, a lot of running, just go out and play. So I never did the tackle football growing up. My first year of tackle football was my freshman year in high school. And then I kind of just took off from there. And then I started getting looked at for football a little bit. And I remember Nebraska asking me after, I already committed to play baseball if I wanted to do both. And, it was just kind of a business decision on my end. I could have been a slow defensive back in the Big 12 or continue doing what I did on the baseball field. So I think I made the right decision, and it all played out well.
I think so, man, because honestly, you had just one heck of an amazing career in Nebraska. And I remember, just being a lifelong Royals fan as Bobby is, just the whole city was so excited. I mean, essentially, Nebraska being so close, it was like drafting a local kid to come back to Kansas City, man. So, and I know you as a kid, you and your family would come to Royal Stadium, see some games. So how was that? How exciting was that to essentially get drafted by, quote, your hometown team?
Super exciting. Very spoiled to be in that situation. And obviously to play my entire career for the team I grew up, rooting for, cheering for when I was a little kid. But in college, when I was about to get drafted, I remember we were playing. It was in the postseason. And we were playing Miami in the Super Regional to go to the College World Series, and the draft is a little different now than it was back then. It wasn't televised. It wasn't really promoted the way it is now, which is I love how it's promoted now. So we were practicing on the field while the draft was going on, and I was in communications with a lot of teams. I actually thought, because most of my communication was with Seattle at number 3, so going into that day and that early morning practice, I thought I was going to get drafted by Seattle.
Wow.
And so we're practicing on the field it's called Haymarket at Nebraska. And, the stands are empty. I did have my older brother come to practice so he could listen into the draft and then, kind of shout at me which number I was picked. So it was like a half an hour into practice, and my brother whistled at me and then held up number 2. And, that's kind of how I found out. And then the team kind of got together, stopped practice, and congratulated me. So it was a pretty cool moment.
That's amazing.
Well, on that team in particular, you had a couple other future big leaguers too, didn't you?
Yeah. So Brian Dunson, who was picked by the Twins, I think either a 3rd or 5th round, had a great career with them and a couple other teams. And then not that year, but the next year, Jabba Chamberlain
right.
Who was drafted by the Yankees. And then we also had Tony Watson, who didn't have a huge college career, but had the potential and got drafted and then just took off once he got drafted. So there's a few other guys here and there, but yeah, a lot of good players on that team. And that's, kind of why we had the season we did my junior year.
That's amazing. So who did you think the first two guys were going to be picked ahead of you in that draft?
I knew Upton was just being the high school kid and everything.
Right.
And, the year prior, I played summer baseball for Team USA. And so I got a glimpse of, some of the talent at my level, my grade. Some of the guys were Troy Tulowitzki was one of them. Ryan Zimmerman, who was on the team too. He actually took my spot at third base. So we both made the team. And, my defense over at third wasn't that great. So we were both over there at third. And the coach wanted us to be, on the field at the same time. So they ended up pushing me over to first base, which was totally fine. But those two kind of stood out to me. So I thought one of those two might go in front of me in the draft. But, that Team USA team was a lot of fun to be a part of and, got to see some of that talent.
That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. Well, the other night I was flipping around MLB Network, and I saw our guy Mike Sweeney there. You know how they have the new, like the draft lottery with the balls?
Yeah.
Yep.
He was actually the guy there sitting representing the Royals.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can't have anybody better, a nicer guy to represent your organization than Mike Sweeney. I always tell him every time I see him, I'm like, you're too nice. Just say something mean to me one time. And sure enough, he'll never do it. But great guy, love him to death. And he was that guy my rookie year that took me under his wing and told our clubhouse secretary, Terry, put Alex by my locker because I'm going to take care of him. And surely he did. I mean, on the road, everywhere, just showed me the ins and outs and how to be a big leaguer. So I always thank him for that.
That's amazing. So, man, like coming up as a rookie, I mean, you're learning the ropes, like you said. How important is that to have, a mentor or a person that you can look up to kind of show you the ropes that first year?
It was huge for me, especially. And we did have that manager, Buddy Bell. I only had him for one season, but he was great. And you guys might remember I came up, I missed AAA. So they kind of fast tracked me to the big leagues. Missed AAA, which, I probably, needed it a little bit. I got to the big leagues and I struggled for the first month and a half, had some bright moments here and there, but it was very important to have leadership like Mike Sweeney and Buddy Bell, who was always, pulling me aside and kind of keeping my head up and always encouraging me and keeping me on the right track. So without those two guys, probably that year early on, I probably don't bounce back and have the second half of the season the way I did my rookie year.
Yeah, man, it's so important to have that leadership, that mentorship, especially as a young person, whether it's on a baseball field or in an organization for sure. As you were going on in your career, what other players did you kind of wrap your arm around in that Sweeney role to make sure that they weren't kind of left behind and mentored by you, just like Sweeney was for you?
There's the obvious guys like Eric Hosmer, Mike Moustakas, but to be honest, those years of 12, 13, 14, 15, I really think the Royals did such a good job bringing those guys through the organization and bringing them up at the right time, where when they got there, I mean, they were ready to go and they were ready to just make an impact on the big league. So, I mean, there were things here and there, and I did say some things and I tried to encourage them just like Sweeney and, Buddy did for me. But, once we got to 13, 14, and 15, there was not much that we had to do. We just had a solid team, guys that did their business their way, and we're just always ready to go come game time. So it was pretty lucky. It was more for me stepping up and being that leader. It was more after those guys left in 2017, I would say. Wow. When we kind of just had that switch in the roster, and a lot of young guys had to come up through it, and it was kind of, I might be missing a couple of guys, but it was like me, Salvi, Duffy. I know Witt was a part of it a little bit too, but just some guys that just needed to, be a leader and show these guys the ropes, just like Sweeney did for me. So I would say it was more after that young group kind of left in 17.
Yeah, you talk about coming up and basically going from AA right to the majors, which is a massive jump. But talk a little bit about when you were in the minor leagues, because you guys had some really good teams there in Wichita, didn't you, as you were coming up?
Yeah. So my first year, so I missed all 2005 because, like I said earlier, the draft was different. I spent the whole summer, I think, pretty much negotiating my contract, which probably wasn't worth it, but it is what it is. And so missed the whole 2005 season, and then came in the 2006, went straight to AA. And we had an amazing team. It was just a bunch of prospects that went to that team, and our coach was actually Frank White, the Royals Hall of Famer. So we had him in Wichita, and really didn't have a ton of guys coming up, like getting sent down, stuff like that. So it was a pretty, close-knit group there in Wichita. I do remember we did get Luke Hochaver because he missed the draft in 5 because of contract complications, and then got drafted 6, and then came to our team later. So we got him late in the season, and we also got Mr. Zach Greinke, who was coming back from his,
from his mini retirement.
Yeah, mini retirement. And it was funny because our team was a bunch of college kids. We were all having fun. Like, it just kind of felt like I was back out in Nebraska playing. And I remember Zach getting there and saying to the organization, "Hey, I don't want to leave here. Even if you guys want to call me up, I want to stay here. I want to enjoy this summer." And so I think that kind of speaks volumes for the kind of team we had and how much fun we had in Wichita. So we ended up coming just short, winning a championship in Wichita. I think we lost Game 7 or something, Game 5, whatever it was, in Corpus Christi. But what a fun year! I always say that was one of my favorite years. So I still have a lot of good friends from that team, and it was a blast.
That's awesome.
So Alex, everyone has their Zach Greinke story, right? So do you have a specific Zach Greinke story that you can share with us?
Man, I have so many of them. Some I probably want to share, some I don't.
Go somewhere in the middle.
There's 2 starts in Wichita that I think that just I think it was the first start he showed up, and all he had on was his baseball pants and his jersey, nothing underneath. He had his baseball cleats, and he ended up going out there and throwing a gem, and then just kind of going to the bench and just sitting there, and we're just like, this guy's amazing, but like, what is going on right now? And then there was another time in a start. It was on the road, and I can't remember what happened, but the guys, the position players are warming up, like we're doing our sprints, and we look out there, and usually pitchers warm up way before the position players. And Greinke was starting for us, and he was sitting in the outfield, cross-legged, and just picking like dandelions out of the grass and not even warming up. And it was like 5 minutes. We're like, what the heck is going on? And I don't know what was going on with him. I didn't ask, but he went up there and threw a gem again. And I'm just like, this guy's just something different. And I have so many stories. I mean, there's one more story. There's so many stories I could tell you, but there's one. I think it was 2000, I think it was 17. I won the Gold Glove, and Zach won the Gold Glove too. And every year, which is great, Rawlings does a celebration in New York at the Plaza Hotel, and it's like 5-star, just amazing. Celebrities are there, everything, like, it's great. And I show up, and Zach, I haven't seen Zach in a while, and he's with his wife, who we're good friends with. And first thing he says to me, he's like, I didn't think they let guys that hit 210 win Gold Gloves.
Oh.
And if you know Zach, like, he's
so
really
dry.
honest. He's so dry, but like, if you do not want the truth, do not ask him.
Right.
And he just said that. And like, me and Zach are really good friends, and I kind of just shook it off, and it was whatever. But my wife and I just tell that story all the time because, like, he was dead serious too.
That's
So
amazing.
He probably doesn't think anything about it.
no, he doesn't. And I kind of was mad but chuckled at the same time just because I knew it was Zach.
That's great. Actually, at fantasy camp this past year, or just last month. So I'm stretching one morning, and George Brett comes up, and we're just BSing, talking. And Zach came up, and George goes, you know what? Let's just call him. So George puts his arm around me. He calls Zach, gets him on speakerphone. I go, George, ask him if he'll come on our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And George goes, in pure George fashion, tells me to shut the hell up. And he goes, I gotta get Zach on my podcast first before I'll ask him to go on yours.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
Yeah. Hey, Alex, could you imagine if Zach came to fantasy camp and had to tell 100 guys how old they were and they weren't any good in baseball?
Oh, man.
You know what? A couple of years ago or 10 years ago, I would have said it wouldn't have never happened. But I swear Zach has turned over a new leaf. Like, he calls me all the time, asks me to play golf. Like, there was one point, I think it was a couple of years ago, I was like, who is this guy? Like, he's just very outgoing, just reaching out to me, and I think he's a changed man. So who knows? He's not done playing. I hope he still, plays another year, because it's always fun to watch him on TV.
Right.
And everything, but maybe when he gets done, I'll try to get him to venture out there.
That'd be awesome.
That would be. So we're talking earlier about skipping AAA, right, and just going straight to AA. There were obviously a lot, right to the majors. There were a lot of expectations on you as a young player at all levels, right? I'm sure you even felt that at high school, and then obviously when you got to college. Being heralded as, quote unquote, the next George Brett, et cetera. I think there's a lot of life lessons in here for people that are listening that have a certain amount of expectation on their shoulders. So maybe kind of take us through that process as a young player, as a young man, of having this almost like a burden of this entire town, this baseball community looking at Alex Gordon as this person who's going to save this team and take us to the promised land.
Because we were starving for a winner,
Everyone was starved for a winner, right? So just maybe kind of talk about this process of what it was like mentally and emotionally going through that for you.
Yeah. It was, obviously coming in the Royals organization, there was a lot of problems. They were losing 100 games every year. So, there wasn't going to be just one guy that kind of, changed the whole thing. I do remember my first game at Copeland Stadium. It was opening day, and, I was super excited, coming out of spring training, winning the job at third base. And I remember running out to my position to start the season, and we're playing the Boston Red Sox, which didn't really help, because you're playing heroes that you grew up playing against, like David Ortiz, Kurt Schilling, who I faced my first at bat.
Right.
And then I went to the games, but then going to third base and then seeing the crowd, a sold out crowd, and I didn't realize how big Copeland Stadium was at the time, and just looking up and just being almost like shocked and overwhelmed. And so I don't think I had a good game that game. I think everybody remembers my first at bat, bases loaded. It was actually, I'm going to pat myself on the back, it was actually a decent at bat.
So you had some fouls. Yeah.
Foul balls, 3-2 count, and then he ended up throwing the splitter, which was smart. But, it was just one of those things where, I just got off to a rough start, and just being a rookie with a lot of expectations, I think I put a little bit too much pressure on myself. And, like we talked about earlier, I just had guys that kind of were always in my ear, telling me things that I need to hear. And then, there's one game in particular in my rookie year. I was starting to get some confidence, starting to get some success in the big leagues. And then it was in Cleveland. I think I ended up going 4 for 4 with, a homer, a couple doubles, and then I kind of just took off from there. So, a lot of it had to do with just, kind of believing in myself, and just going back to, just knowing, believing in yourself has a lot to do with it. And, once I kind of had that game, I was like, you know what, you can play in this league, just go out there, have fun, and let the rest happen. So, it really didn't click for me. Some guys, especially nowadays, it clicks pretty early for guys. They're so well prepared, even not even getting drafted, just growing up and with all the technology and everything. But for me, I had some good years, 7, 8, and then obviously the injuries. And 2009, and then another injury and then position change in 2010. So 9 and 10 were really tough for me. But I would say in 2011 is when it really clicked. And, obviously coming off 2 injuries and position change, I was, internally motivated. But I also had some really good coaches at the time. I had Kevin Seitzer, who lives in Kansas City. And, I always thought I knew hitting a little bit, but I really didn't know anything about hitting until I met Kevin Seitzer. He really, we started, usually I don't start training for, the season until like January, until New Year's is over. And we started training like, late November. He took it upon himself and he was like, hey, we're going to fix this. We're going to get it right. So it was me and him pretty much in Kansas City all winter long, just almost every day in the cage, just going about the ins and outs of a swing and the approach and everything. I learned so much from him. I was actually, I wish I could have spent more than just 2 years with him, but I did get a lot out of him from those 2 years, and it kind of just, propelled me for the rest of my career. So, he had a big part to do with my change. Ned Yost, Rusty Kuntz, obviously, 2 other coaches that were a big part of that change in 2011. So, I'm kind of rambling right now, but
that's good stuff,
just,
man.
It's it. I think being successful in life, you just need to surround yourself with great people and good people. And that's what I had throughout my career. So I always kind of look back on it and give praise to people that helped me out along the way.
It's so cool that you mentioned Kevin Seitzer because we've had the chance to meet him over the years going down to Royals camp. And it's so cool to see him, even after, he left the Royals, but going down to Atlanta and seeing those guys and the way those guys have hit over the past few years down in the Braves organization. He's just a cool dude. Like Kevin Seitzer is one of the best, man.
Yeah, he is. He's great. He knows his hitting. He knows his stuff. And obviously, he knows what he's doing because the Braves won a championship with him. So I was super excited to see him do that and bring home that ring for himself. And, I was going for the Braves just because of him.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think a lot of people were.
Exactly.
So talking about staying with the organization for your entire career, which obviously was very, very special to the town, to the city, obviously to you. So maybe touch on that in a minute. But when George was on the podcast, he told a story about how there were a few instances where he was actually really, really close to getting traded by the Royals and ended up almost with the St. Louis Cardinals and put a little dig in there with the Kauffman organization.
Right.
It's quite a good story. But for you, was there ever another opportunity, or how close were you to ever being with another team? And if you can share any kind of story that maybe showcases how fortunate the town was to have you as a forever Royal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you could probably ask Dayton, but there's probably many times through, 2009, 2010 that he wanted to trade me. So there's probably a lot of instances I don't know about, but luckily for me, I kind of stayed with Kansas City and was able to play here my entire career. But there was a couple times. I'll start with 2019. It was the end of my 4-year contract with the team. I was actually having a pretty good year, and I remember it was the day of the trade deadline, and there was rumors about me going places here and there and stuff like that, but nothing really, that I had to discuss with my agent or, Dayton or anything like that. And then I remember, I think I was taking like a nap on the training table, getting some treatment. And then all of a sudden our traveling secretary came up to me and was like, hey, Dayton wants to see you in his office. And they kind of called me in, and the Braves were actually making a playoff push at the time. And I think it was Nick Markakis just broke his hand, so they had they had a void in their outfield. And, me being a free agent, coming up on my free agent year, they kind of reached out to the Royals and thought, I was kind of identical to Nick Markakis and thought I would be a good fit to come over there. And so me and Dayton kind of talked about it. I'm not going to tell you exactly how that conversation went, but it ended up didn't happening. We thought it was just best for me to stay with Kansas City, but it just obviously would have been cool, being in the postseason. I experienced it in 14 and 15, but there's nothing quite like it. And You know, looking back on it now, you know, maybe at the time I wanted to go maybe a little bit to the Braves just to experience the postseason because we weren't going anywhere at the time. But looking back on it now, I'm really glad that we kind of decided what we decided at the time with the Dayton. So that was one moment, and then in 2015, obviously coming off my free agent year again, we just won the World Series. I was a free agent, which I thought was going to be, you know, pretty exciting. I've never been it before, but I actually hated it. My whole goal was to come back to Kansas City after, you know, the World Series run and everything. And my agent knew that, and he was like, just be patient. It's going to take time. And I thought something was going to happen pretty quick. And it was just like every waking day I would, you know, or every other day I'd text my agent, who's Casey Close, and be like, hey, you know, what's going on? And he'd be like, oh, yeah, Baltimore's reached out. You know, the Angels have reached out, blah, blah. St. Louis has reached out. And after every conversation, I'd be like, has Kansas City said anything? They're like, nope. And so this dragged on for, I mean, you know, days and days until it's with another team, it started to get pretty serious. And I'm not going to tell you what team. I will tell you it was with the team that was in our division.
Wow.
But
Okay.
it was getting pretty serious, and it was, you know, coming to January, and I'm like, well, I haven't heard anything from Kansas City, so like I need to figure this out. And, you know, me and my wife need to know where we're going to live, blah, blah, blah. Not that I wanted to go somewhere else. And so finally I just picked up the phone and I called Dayton and I texted Dayton. I was like, hey, you know, I don't want to go anywhere else. I think you know that. And, you know, I just haven't heard anything from you guys. You know, what are you thinking? Just kind of picked his brain. And I was like, there's another team that's really interested. And, you know, if you guys aren't, like, just let me know. And, you know, I'll be, you know, obviously I'll be upset and, you know, I'll understand, but I just need to make a decision. And then after that, I think it was almost New Year's Eve. It just took off. Dayton kind of made contact with my agent, and then everything kind of took care of itself. And I think it was New Year's Eve I ended up, you know, finding out that I was with Luke Kochaver and Jeff Francoeur, who are like best friends to me, and we're on a vacation. And I found out through my agent, and we all just kind of celebrated, and it was kind of cool to have them with me. And it was a special moment because the whole time I wanted to come back to Kansas City. It just took a while than I thought. So
did they make you pick up the tab that night, Alex?
I think I did. Yeah, I think I picked up the tab. Yes.
But you know what? That had to be kind of a
a cool story that we're telling stories is,
yeah.
So I signed with Kansas City in 15 after the 15 season, and after I came back home after New Year's Eve, and I had to go get my physical, and so we're out by KU Midwest. It's like a 435, and I don't know, Johnson or something over there. So I was getting my physical, and then me and the trainer went and got something to eat right next door, and so we sit down at the bar, and couple of guys come up and congratulate me, and they ended up buying my tab. So I was like, "Oh, this is nice. Maybe I should go out to eat more often." Yeah, so.
That's fantastic.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic. Well, I mean, that had to be kind of a, you know, kind of a careful play because, you know, you wanted to come back to Kansas City, but I mean, you just didn't want to be like, "Hey, I want to be back in Kansas City," and you know, and lose any leverage, right? So,
well, yeah,
yeah.
So, well, I mean, everybody in the organization knew I wanted to come back. I just, you know, with the family of baseball players, MLB, there's got to become a certain time where, you know, if I end up taking a huge discount, then I'm kind of taking a discount to other players because everybody always plays off other contracts and everything like that.
Right.
And I always tell Dayton, you could have gave me a lot less more, and I would have came back. And he's like, don't tell me that. But at the same time, you know, you want to do what's best for the family of the players. And I became a player rep, so I kind of understood like the whole process of that and everything. So it's not about being greedy. It's just about taking care of one another. I would say that's kind of, you know, what happened there.
Very cool.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Hoach and Francoeur,
Frenchie,
and those guys. Yeah, Frenchie. Those guys, haven't heard those names in a while, so I know that you're friends with them. I think last year, the first year that you came to fantasy camp, you were talking about getting Hoach to come to camp.
Yeah,
or get those guys coming down.
Yeah, we're trying to get not the. I mean, we love George Brett, the older guys, Wathan,
Sure.
Willie, all those guys. Great stories, great personalities. But it'd be kind of cool to. I know we did get Jeremy Guthrie out there
Mm-hmm.
this year, Bruce Chen, just a couple guys from that younger generation, 14 and 15. I mean, a lot of them are still playing too, so
It's true.
That's
it's
a good
kind of hard
point.
to do. But I have tried to get Luke the last 2 years. If you don't know Luke, he's an avid hunter. So
Mm,
anything that he tries to do, he has to plan around his hunting season, duck season, deer season, all that. So it's a hard schedule to get through, but one of these days we're going to get it.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
super cool. Hey, you mind if we tackle a couple World Series questions with you, Alex?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. So one of our good buddies, Jimmy from camp, uh, Jimmy has a question here. He wants to know what was your mindset in that ninth inning, before you hit the homer off Familia. What was that mindset of that at bat? Because here we are, game one, wasn't looking too good. In fact, if my memory serves me correctly, I mean, Hosmer's probably one of your biggest fans because I think what the inning before he had one maybe go off his glove or something like that. But going up there, what was your mindset trying to get a hit in that situation?
Not to do what I did. you know, against a closer like that who's been just lights out the whole postseason, the
hmm
whole year. You don't try to get too big because the minute you do, nothing good happens. So just try to stay simple. I'm trying to hit a base hit up the middle, but I will tell you that I've told this story many times, but in the postseason, we have scouting reports during the season, but it's nothing extensive. It's pretty quick. Go over the starting pitcher, maybe a bullpen guy here and there, but in the postseason, you go over every guy. I'm talking position by position. Every guy in the bullpen, every starter. It takes a while, but it's so worth it. And I do remember being on deck, and we went over familiar. We know he has like heavy sinker, um, but I was on deck and Salvi was hitting, and he did a quick pitch to Salvi, and we never talked about that. And I kind of learned, looked behind on the bench, and Dale Swain, who was our hitting coach at the time, hey, was like, "Hey, be ready for it." He likes a quick pitch every once in a while. Just don't be shocked that he does it to you. So I was like, "All right." So I get in the box, and first pitch goes by. Can't remember exactly pitch by pitch what happened, but after every pitch, I didn't step out of the box. I stayed in the box, so I was ready and just made sure I wasn't surprised by the quick pitch because Salvi kind of was, and you could tell he was late a little bit. So stayed in the box, and I think it was a 2-1 count, and sure enough, he quick pitched me, which um, with his kind of stuff was kind of stupid because if you watch the pitch, I mean, it sank just a little bit, but it was just right down the middle at
Mm-hmm.
94, 95, which is what every hitter's looking for. So it was just one of those swings where you're just trying to stay simple and you just put a perfect swing on it, and the rest is history. So hitting it to dead center in Copeland Stadium. With my power, I just never know if I did it or not. So when I hit it, I didn't know if it was gone, but I ended up going pretty far. So I think he provided a little bit of the power.
So that was my question because you absolutely crushed it. But when you hit it, did you know absolutely that was going to go? Did you know you crushed it, or did you have to wait a little bit? Because I know, there's that famous picture of you rounding first. In fact, I think we got that signed at fantasy camp, and I think you don't. I think you said you don't even remember
Right.
that picture, pointing up. So, at what point did you realize that ball was going to go?
Probably when you saw me start pointing my finger up at first base. There's not a lot of times that I actually celebrated my home runs. They call them, pimp jobs or whatever. But in Kauffman Stadium, I mean that's the biggest park, hands down, in the league, just corner to corner. So there's not a lot of times where you hit it and you're just like, I know that's gone, especially the center field. Like Soler, maybe, but Salvi, maybe, but myself, no chance. So when I hit it, I knew I hit it good. I knew it had a chance. I just didn't know if I got enough of it. So just not knowing going to first and then obviously seeing it cross the fence is when, that's when I put the finger up and kind of celebrated. I do remember kind of like pumping my fist going around first base and everything like that. So just special moment.
Yeah, that was epic.
For sure. Are you going to ask another World Series question?
Go ahead.
Well, this is the one that we've heard this, but a lot of people ask about this. Well,
the question.
But here's the thing: this isn't going to be like the straightforward, simple question. I think it would be really cool if Alex talked through the holdup in 2014, because it's not just, people ask that question, oh, would you have made it? I think you've talked about this at fantasy camp, and with us, a bunch of us guys, you actually went into a lot more detail. So maybe for the listeners that haven't heard your perspective, maybe share what exactly went down.
Yeah. So I'll just run you through the whole scenario. So, ninth inning, 2 outs, lefty on lefty, which nasty. Bumgarner just coming, from the side is always tough for a lefty to, try to hit. But I did say this against Familia. I was actually trying to go deep the first swing of my at bat, and just because I knew the guy, I knew Madison was going to come after me with a fastball and just try to challenge me early on. So, being ninth inning, 2 outs, and we weren't getting much from, him at all as far as base runners or anything like that. So I just said, hey, I'm going to come out of my shoes and try to hit a homer. And sure enough, I did. And obviously I fouled it off. But after that, I kind of locked in, was like, just like I talked about before, I was like, all right, base it up the middle. Don't get too big. You had your chance. Now just think base up at the middle. Let Sally get on for Sally. So sure enough, he threw me a cutter away, got the base hit. So the thing with Kauffman Stadium is they changed the fences, and now that they have video boards in the fences. So when I hit it to left center and kind of saw it going that way, I knew it was a base hit. And then when I touched first, I couldn't really tell what happened because of the screen. So like I'm hitting first base and listening to Rusty, and the last thing I want to do is get thrown out on the bases to end the game. I mean,
Right.
I couldn't imagine what would happen then.
Right.
So, I'm kind of running as fast as I can, but at the same time trying to be smart about it. And so, I'm just going, and then hitting second base. You're in your 170th game of the year or whatever it was. Your body's exhausted. You're playing on adrenaline. I remember hitting second base and almost falling over. If you watch me going around second base, I hit it, and then I start doing the tumble swim. And luckily, I was able to catch myself and not fall down. That would have been a disaster. But coming around third, I kind of just took a peek over my shoulder to kind of see where the ball was at, and then caught Jersh, and he had the hands up, so that's when I shut it down. But looking back on it now, would it have been cool to go in that kind of situation? Absolutely. Who knows if I would have been safer out, but to end the World Series on a play at home plate, whether it was safe or out, I thought would have been pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Obviously people would have been upset, what could have been, whatever, but I think the whole world just would have been in shock on what just happened. So I do remember earlier in the game, my first at bat, I hit a double to right center, and Billy was on first, and he ended up, scoring from first base. But it was Crawford that made the throw from, middle of the outfield and right center, and just threw an absolute missile, one hop, and it was a perfect throw. And this time he was in his normal position, which is shortstop, not too far in the outfield. And, making that clean catch, he actually scooped it, but then made a good transition. So people always ask me, would I have been safer out? I'm probably 95% sure I would have been out if I would have went, just knowing Crawford and what kind of a player he is, and obviously Buster behind the home plate. But if I would have been out and by a couple steps, I definitely would have ran over Buster Posey as hard as I could. I would have brought back my college or my high school football days,
right,
and just crush him as hard as I could. And it would have been kind of cool to see what the response would have been from the umpires, from replay, because I think they made a rule. It might have been either that year or the year before. It was called the Buster Posey rule because he broke his ankle, getting ran over at home plate. And to think if I would have ran him over and been safe, and they would have called me out because I ran over the catcher, I mean, just the craziness would have happened over that. So just so many outcomes that you can kind of play around with and look back on. But obviously it didn't work out, but with Salvi up at the next at bat, and but something that was cool that that kind of shut a lot of people asking me about that question, because I got asked all the time the next season at spring training and everything, is the fact that we won in 15 and the fact that Salvi was MVP. So it kind of all just worked out for itself. So it was cool to. It was a bummer how it happened, but cool how it all kind of unfolded the next season.
It's such a cool story, and everyone has their what ifs, and no one knows, but just to come back in that 15 season and win the World Series, so not everyone's talking about that play over and over, and 15 was such a special year, and as we basically had that miracle game down in Houston to overcome in that playoff game, because it wasn't looking too good there for a while, and you guys made a massive comeback on that. So speaking of which, what was that like, being down so much to the Astros in that playoff game, and you guys, gosh, what was it? Was it 7 runs that you came back from? It was something crazy.
I think it was 7-2 at one point, and I knew that was my free agent year, but I really never talked about it during the season, because I knew we all just had higher things to take care of, and never really thought about it, just because of the team we had, until that moment when it was 7-2 in Houston, and I was like, "Holy crap, this could be our last time in Kansas City. This freaking sucks," and almost kind of sad out in the outfield. And I'll never forget, just how loud this stadium was. It was a dome, and they were going nuts. And I remember coming into the dugout, and Moustakis, people probably already heard about this, but Moustakis is one of the nicest guys, but when he crosses the line, the white line, he just becomes an a-hole. Like, it's just his personality. Like, he is intense. He is, but in a good way. Like, he just gets after it. And I remember coming in the dugout, and he just goes on his rant in the dugout. Like, we're not, and there was a lot of different words involved, but he's like, we're not losing this game. There's no way this has happened to us, blah, blah, blah. And the dugout was actually down when we came in. And then Moose did that for like 20, 30 seconds. And it was kind of uplifting a little bit. And then obviously we go out and that same inning, go out and put together the inning that we did. So hats off to Moose. Who knows if he didn't do that speech in the dugout, if we would have,
that's cool,
came back. But it's all said and done now. So it was a cool moment.
That's awesome.
That is great. Thanks for sharing those stories, man.
Because I don't think a lot of people have heard that.
No, it's like
Moose.
Inside information, right, for a lot of Royals fans. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So post baseball, right? What do you got cooking right now? You're playing a lot of golf, I'm sure.
Well, the wife just looked at me. The wife just looked at me and was like, "Hey, you're off schedule right now. Like, you got to go pick up the kids." Or no.
Oh, shit.
Tell her we're almost done with you.
I'm just kidding. No, it's just catching up on one of the reasons. I mean, there was a couple of reasons I kind of walked away when I did. One of the reasons was I love baseball. I love the competitiveness of baseball, but one of the reasons I stepped away was because my kids were getting older, and I was always gone. I was always in a hotel room, living out of a suitcase, and they were starting to get older, started to play sports, be in school, and I just wanted to be around more than I was for them. And so now post my career, just trying to catch up on lost time, and just be that not that I wasn't a good dad before, but just be that dad that's around, that's present all the time. And I'm taking them everywhere. I'm always at the house. I'm coaching them. So it's a 24/7 job. I always tell people, like, I always actually had it made when I was playing, because I am more busy now than when I was playing. So just it's a lot of work for all that stay-at-home moms and all those people. Like, man, it's a grind. So, but no, there's, like I said, just catching up on lost family time. Finding some hobbies here and there, playing golf, hunting, stuff like that. So just, kind of enjoying life. And, I'm still involved with the Royals, nothing under contract or anything like that, but, obviously living in the city, knowing Dina Blevins and some of the people in the organization, just always trying to help out any way that I can. So just trying to be present still with them and help them out whenever they need it. So, staying busy though.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. So, Bobby, have you more questions? Because I know his wife is looking.
No,
at
that
right
was
now.
that was more of a joke. I was just giving you guys a hard time.
Bring Jamie on. Jamie can pop on to a.
Yeah, she's
Right?
she's more entertaining than I am. So
Oh, heck no, man. No, this is
yeah.
fantastic. Now, do you keep in contact with any of the guys now that
Oh yeah.
you're retired? You still
Yeah.
hang?
Yeah. So check this out. What I did this year. So I'm a huge fantasy football guy.
Oh,
Here we go. Yeah.
So like I was like, how do I, keep in touch with these guys? So like I started my own fantasy football league, and it's called the Has-Beens. And so I made this. So asked all the guys, and then we made this trophy for.
Oh, heck yeah.
So it's called the
Look at
Has-Beens Fantasy
that.
Football League. But
wow.
so this is the first year we've done it. But the reason I did it was just to kind of keep in touch with some of the guys. So, James Shields is on it, Wade Davis, Greg Holland, Ho Shaver, just a lot of guys. So, we had some special moments throughout our careers together, and it became like some of my best friends. So still keep in touch with a lot of them, and as much as we can, just being in different states and having our families. But, we try to get together at least once a year with something, or playing golf, or doing something, or, something stupid like fantasy football.
That's so cool. Now you guys, you make sure that you give each other crap about the teams and how bad their teams are, right?
Oh yeah, it's a 24/7, talking smack that's going on. So
What's the thing at the top of the trophy there?
It's
Is
just
it like a guy
I
on a recliner watching
I
football?
found it on Amazon. I don't
Some
know.
dude on a couch.
Yeah, a couch with football. Just I thought it kind of went with the theme of has-been. So I don't know. We just kind of had fun with it. So my team sucks this year. I had the first overall pick, and that's never good. So
Ooh, right, yeah. Right on.
I was happy to start it and get all the guys together.
Awesome. Hey, what's your favorite Bob Seger song?
Ooh, all of them really. So I grew up. I'm a huge '80s rock and roll guy. I'd say Bob Seger, Eddie Money are some of my favorite guys.
Wasn't your dad a huge Bob Seger fan?
Yeah, so growing up, I was always listening to Bob Seger. Nightly Moves is obviously probably my favorite one, but I got a cool story about Eddie Money. So Eddie Money came and sang the national anthem in Copeland Stadium in 2011. And if you don't know anything about me, I'm like a routine-oriented guy where, like, during the season, like I was like clockwork. I'd be in the same spot every time. Mm-hmm. And so that 2011 season, I'd have a pregame song. I'd be in the hot tub warming up, and I'd have this pregame song just blaring, and everybody could hear in the clubhouse. And it was Eddie Money, Take Me Home Tonight.
Yes.
And people would always make fun of me, but it worked, and I just stayed with it. And sure enough, Eddie Money came to the field, and everybody knew that I was a huge Eddie Money fan. And so got to meet him, shake his hand, and you could tell he had a lot of fun in the 80s.
Yeah,
but
he did.
Yeah.
All right.
Right. Unfortunately, but at the time he was like, "Hey, I heard you're a huge fan." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "What's your favorite song?" And I was thinking about "Take Me Home Tonight," but I was like, "Hey, Shakin'," and he's like, "All right, just give me a second." And it was like a 5-second pause, and he started singing "Shakin'" out loud in the clubhouse to me, face to face, for like 30 seconds, and I was like, "This is freaking awesome!" So
that's amazing.
Yeah, got an autograph, took a picture. It was a cool moment.
That's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. You got any business opportunities or charity stuff that you want to talk about and bring some attention to right now?
Well, obviously, if anybody knows me pretty well, I've been involved in the Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation for, I think it got started in 2010. Well, for me, it got started in 2010. It was a simple meet and greet at the field with a bunch of kids, and then it kind of just took off from there. And, it just seems like every year we've kind of progressively gotten bigger and bigger. And it was kind of cool to hear. If you don't know anything about this foundation, it was started by a little girl that had cancer at 4 years old. She started a lemonade stand and to raise money for other people, and she ended up raising $1 million. Awesome story. If you have time, go to the website, read about it. But it's based out of Philadelphia, is where she's from. And one year we went to the big banquet out there. It's called the Lemon Mixer, and I got represented as the fundraiser of the year, which was a pretty cool deal, and got to meet a lot of people. But it was kind of special to hear that Alex's parents, Liz and Scott, kind of talked to me about how special it is because nobody in the big leagues really promotes the Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation quite like the Kansas City Royals. Yeah, and I was like, even Philadelphia, and they're like, no. So it was kind of cool to hear that the Royals and this community has done such a big part with the Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation. We're doing things, throughout the year. This past year, we did a golf tournament. I also have this baseball tournament that we've done for 9 seasons now through Perfect Game. It's baseball and softball. It's in April, and it gets a pretty good turnout. So there's just a lot of things we do to try to, create awareness and bring funds for, childhood cancer. So that's probably the biggest thing that, that I've been a part of, and it means a lot to me.
That's fantastic. What's the website, Alex? Off the top of your head?
alexslemonade.org.
Okay.
Or .org.com, one of the two. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Yep.
Definitely check that out. Hey, quick question for you, and we want to be respectful of your time. So what's the story? Because I know one of our buddies here from camp, Jimmy, is a huge baseball card collector. So what was the story on your 2006 Topps baseball card and your Rookie of the Year? I feel like you're pulling one out.
Boom. I got them all right here. Look at it. So I got there they are.
Look at that.
So what happened? It was Topps, I think, did it on purpose. I mean, I don't know. I still don't have the answer, but they put out my rookie card before I made it to the big leagues, which was ended up being an error card. And I think I was the number 1 prospect at the time. It was a pretty big deal. And I think, so I was in AA, and every time we went to a different city, in the clubhouse, there'd be reporters that would come up to me, and they wouldn't ask me questions about the season, baseball, nothing. It was always about my baseball card because it was generating so much attention, so much money on eBay and all this stuff. So they're like, do you have a card? And I was like, no, I don't have a card. I haven't got one. And it was just kind of a every week kind of deal I had to talk about. But
right.
Something that those cards that I have in my office right now, it was 2007. I still didn't get a card, error card. And we went and played Arizona in an interleague game. And the announcer for Arizona actually sent those cards down to me and had 5 of them and was like, I think this would mean more to you than it does to me. So
that's amazing.
Pretty cool thing that he did. And, I still have them to this day. So
that's fantastic. Because didn't Topps recall some of them, or said they had punched holes in some of them? I was reading something. They either stopped issuing them or did something. That's why the value.
Yeah, either that or they said there was only a couple more left, and then so people had to go start buying more and more, which is why I think it was all planned by Topps. But
right, sure.
It was nuts how much money it was selling on eBay. It was like, I'm not that good, guys.
That's awesome. Fantastic.
That's
DC,
awesome.
You got anything else?
That's it, man. No, he did a fantastic job, Alex, man. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and sharing some great stories that I know a lot of the listeners have not heard before. And, dude, we just really appreciate you and getting to meet you the past couple of years. It's just been really awesome, man. We thank you so much.
Absolutely. We'll plan on being on your fantasy team next year.
Yes, you might have to talk to Dina for us.
I'll put in a good word for Dina, but no, thanks for having me, guys. This was a blast. And, Bobby, now that I came on your podcast, if I ever have a party, I got to have you play the guitar there. So
yeah, man,
there you go.
If
you guys haven't heard Bobby play the guitar, it's freaking amazing. He did that fantasy camp and just blew everybody out of the water. And the best part of it, he was doing 80s music. So just right up my alley. So
love it, I'm ready whenever you are. As soon as you get that party scheduled, I'll be there.
Right. No.
Cool.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was fun.
Absolutely. Hang on the line for a second. We're going to close this out, and then we'll say a couple more words with you, and then we'll hang up. All right, guys, this has been the Always Be Cool podcast, hanging out with 8-time Gold Glove winner Alex Gordon, future Royals Hall of Famer. This is the Always Be Cool podcast. Find us online at Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple at Always Be Cool Pod, as well as Instagram and Facebook. All right, guys.
Thanks, guys. See you later.